and welcome to the virtual Sunday service for Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman. Our fellowship walks diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united by our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all and the obligation to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Harvey Victor. I've been an active member of this congregation since 2019. And now I have the honor of being the fellowship president. We begin our service by lighting the chalice, the symbol of the light within us. I'm going to read a chalice lighting by Hannah Senesh. Hannah Senesh is a hero in Israel. She was killed by a firing squad in an unsuccessful attempt to rescue Holocaust Jews after landing in Hungary with paratroopers. Here is her message for the chalice. And here is the chalice. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the heart's secret places. Blessed is the heart with strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. And blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. This morning, our speaker is Rabbi David Lipper. His very interesting talk will be broadly about Jewish law. Before he begins, I thought I'd like to share a reading that fits with today's topic. This is an old Jewish prayer. Grant us the ability to find joy and strength, not in the strident call to arms, but in stretching out our arms to grasp our fellow creatures in the striving for justice and truth. After Rabbi Lipper, we'll hear from Michael Eck, our musician, and then I'll be back to say goodbye.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi David Lipper from Temple Kol Tikva, and I'm happy to share these moments with you as we learn a little bit more about each other's traditions. You know, when most of us think of Judaism, we think of the people of the book, the scroll of Torah, 5 books of Moses. From Genesis to Deuteronomy, the Torah tells the story of a people moving from bondage to freedom. Along the way, we learn that there are laws given, rules to abide by, stories to share. We teach that within those pages, or at least within the scroll itself, there are 613 commandments that cover worship and practice and interactions with other human beings. And most importantly, our relationship with God. But Judaism really isn't anymore a tradition based solely on the Torah. And today's lesson is to explain that reality. For thousands of years have passed since the Torah itself was written, codified, made a part of the biblical canon. And Judaism has continued to grow and change and adapt to its surroundings. So today we're going to explore not only the foundation stone of Judaism, the Torah itself, but the building that has grown up around that foundation stone, filled with Talmudic stories, narratives, and reinterpretations of important pieces that the Torah begins. So let me share with you an example. It's probably the best way. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9. It's a very familiar passage in not only the Jewish tradition, but in all biblical religions. It begins, "Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one." And it continues, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. These words which I command you this day shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. Speak of them when you go on your way, when you sit in your home, and when you retire, and when you arise. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them be a symbol before your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates." The Torah describes actions that we should take, but it doesn't fill in all the blanks. For example, it doesn't tell us what words, where they should be written, how they should be written, in what language should they be written, what should we teach, how should we teach, where do we teach them. The Torah leaves a lot of questions unanswered. And so it is the task of rabbinic Judaism to help define the answers to practical questions following the commandments which the Torah presents. And so that gives rise to the Talmudic period. In order to understand the Talmudic period, we have to go back a little ways in time. Prior to the Babylonian destruction of the temple, all religious life was guided by the priests in Jerusalem. They ran the clock. They told us when to do things, and they required behavior which they policed themselves. But what would happen if they suddenly disappeared? Who would be in charge? How would we know what to do? And such was the case when the Babylonians came and carried off many Jews, not all, but many, into captivity in Babylonia, away from a temple that had been destroyed. Suddenly, we had to reboot. It's like what happens with a pandemic. You have to pivot, and Judaism pivoted. The sages living in Babylonia began a process of exploration and expansion of the Torah text to create traditions that reached beyond the limits of the Torah and enabled Jews living in exile to fully immerse themselves in Jewish practice. When Cyrus of Persia defeated Nebuchadnezzar and sent the Jews back to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple and to restore their own traditions, far away from the Persians, of course, many Jews didn't go. They found the comfort of being their own leaders to be of great value. And so they remained in Babylonia and formed schools and taught lessons and explored the text and reinterpreted Torah for their own time. Here's one of the first questions that the Talmud asks. The Torah says, "You shall recite these words when you lie down and when you rise up." So the Talmud asks the question, what time is that? Have you ever really thought? I mean, if you're trying to create a tradition for all people in all places, wouldn't it be great if you could pick a specific time and say to everyone, in order to fulfill this commandment, you must say these words at, and give them a time? Well, because the Torah and people's behavior was different, a great discussion happened. A debate, a conflict, a reinterpretation. And so the Talmud, I'll show you a page. This page of Talmud has 1,800 years of discussion and debate from sages all over the world on the issue of time. What time? Ultimately, they come to a decision. Majority rules, of course. And the minority opinion is recorded just for good measure. Rabbis decided that evening lying down occurred between the hours of 9 p.m. and midnight. Then they also decided that rising up, or awakening, happened between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. Reasonable for sure. Strange that they would be spending their time thinking about that. But they came to a decision. And from that moment on, the Jewish world operated according to that structure. Even today. I'll tell you a side note. I have a very good friend who was a shuttle astronaut. And when he readied himself for his first shuttle mission, he wrote an Orthodox rabbi in New York a question. And the question was, "Hey, Rabbi, I'm about to go up into space. I know I'm supposed to recite the Shema when I lie down and when I rise up. And that somehow coordinates to sunrise and sunset. But here I'm going to be in a rocket ship flying around the Earth 17,000 miles an hour. During the course of a day, I'll see 9 sunrises and 9 sunsets. When do I recite the Shema?" A great question in a modern context. Well, the rabbi did a little research and came out with another interesting Talmudic story, which said that when you leave the port closest to your home by ship, you keep your time by the port at which you left until you arrive at your new port. A rocket ship is a ship, and therefore You set your clock by floor at a time, and you follow Jewish law by floor at a time until you land back in California. That's where they landed back then. And that's the answer. And that's what my friend did. For some people, this is really important, getting it right, you know. And so, Talmud serves a really important role. As I said, there were 1,800 years of debate on that topic on one page. But these rabbis were never in the same place. But the Talmud's written like they are. Imagine what a debate that would be if we had 1,800 years of folks debating some important religious tradition right here. So the Talmud serves a great purpose. As a Reformed Jew, which I am, we believe that we are inheritors of that debate, and we can add our voice into that tradition. Orthodox Judaism tends to side with the people who started the debate, the oldest tradition. We have a different view. Some say tomato, some say tomato. The Talmud is also filled with really important lessons and stories, and I'm going to share one with you as a conclusion. There's the story of a man named Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa we think he wasn't a very nice man. Or maybe he was nice and just was given a bad rap. So there was a Bar Kamsa, and there was another man named Kamsa, and they lived in a town, long time ago. Well, someone else in the town, a wealthy businessman, was having a party, a celebration. And so he sent invitations to everyone in the town, except Bar Kamsa. And the reason is he had a fight with Bar Kamsa many years before, and they had never made peace. Well, when you send invitations back then, they were hand-delivered, and the people delivering the invitations delivered Kamsa's invitation to Bar Kamsa. Oy, what a trouble this made. Well, wouldn't you know, the night of the party, Bar Kamsa showed up with invitation in hand. And he walked in through the front door of the wealthy businessman's house, and everybody froze. The wealthy businessman said, "Get out of my house, Bar Kamsa. You were not invited." And Bar Kamsa's waving his invitation. "I've got my invitation." And the wealthy businessman says, "Get out of my house." And Bar Kamsa says, "I don't want to create strife. I thought you sent the invitation so that we could make peace. Let's make peace. Here, I'll even pay for my own refreshments at the party. Just tell me." And the man says, "Get out, Bar Kamsa." And Bar Kamsa says, "Wait a second, let's not make such a scene. I'll pay for the whole party, just as a gift to you." And the man said to his servants, "Throw this man out in the street." Well, off to the side, there were a group of rabbis sitting around a table, watching all this happen, and they didn't intervene, and Bar Kamsa saw them, and the man had Bar Kamsa thrown out into the street. Well, Bar Kamsa was furious. He was not only furious at the man, he was furious at all the rabbis. And so he concocted a plan, and he went to the Roman governor. And he said to the governor, "The Jews are plotting against you. And here's how I know it. If you send a sacrifice to the temple in Jerusalem, I bet they don't accept it from you." The governor said, let's see, we'll test him. So he gets his best goat and he sends it with Bar Kamsa to the temple in Jerusalem. But wouldn't you know, along the way, Bar Kamsa did something to the goat to make it not permissible to be sacrificed. Bar Kamsa showed up at the temple. The priests saw Bar Kamsa. They knew he was up to no good. He gave them the sacrifice and said it was from the Roman governor, but they knew the sacrifice was no good and they couldn't use it. So they thought about what they would do. Should they offer the sacrifice, even though it wasn't the right kind of animal, or should they refuse the sacrifice and risk the wrath of the governor? Well, they refused the sacrifice. The governor was furious, believed Bar Kamsa, and attacked the temple and destroyed it. The Talmud tells this story to caution us about relationships. So not only does the Talmud explore Jewish practice, it explores Jewish behavior and what is righteous and what is not. So while we look to Torah to guide us and teach us an important story from bondage to redemption, we really need the Talmud to tell us what's the right way to behave, how we can improve ourselves, and what we need to do to make peace in our world. I hope this has expanded your knowledge a little bit and helped you understand the role that the oral Torah, the Talmud, plays in interpreting the written Torah. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Greetings, everyone. This is the Israeli national anthem called Hatikva, Song of Hope. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Mike, and especially thank you, Rabbi Lipper. One thing that he didn't mention that I know, and I'll share with you, is that the founding fathers were basically Hebraicists. They studied Hebrew and they studied Jewish history at Harvard. And some people think that the court system in the Supreme Court, which is used for interpreting the Constitution and keep it current, was inspired by the use of the Talmud in Jewish history. If you're a visitor to our congregation, welcome. I'm pleased that you chose to give our virtual service a try. If you like what you've heard so far and are wondering how to stay connected or get involved, please reach out to our membership chair, Linda. Our email address is right there. We encourage members to continue reaching out to one another virtually whenever possible. Make regular Skype or Zoom dates, keep hosting book or movie clubs by meeting virtually after to discuss them. It's important that we put in the extra effort to sustain the deep bonds that our community has created. If you haven't tuned in at 9:30 to hear Autumn lead our kids in the spiritual exercise, the spiritual exploration program, you ought to do it just once. When you see how wonderful it is, you'll be encouraged to let other people know about it. This is one of the great things our congregation provides. For now, I want to say goodbye to all. Blessed be, and go out and conquer the rest of the day.